Hello and welcome once again to The Blueprints. This is Canada's Conservative Podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Schmale, Member of Parliament for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes Brock, with new content for you every single Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We didn't stop throughout the summer because this is important stuff that needs to be talked about. And because it is, we ask that you like, comment, subscribe, share this program. Together, we can push back against that ever-moving liberal agenda. And of course, if you can't watch or listen to this program in its entirety right this second, you can download it, listen to it at your convenience on platforms like iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, CastBox, you name it. It is out there. Now, amazing that we are still talking about this. It seems to be the thing that keeps on coming back. It's the government and their plans with internet censorship. This is something we've talked about many times before, and it's making its way through the Senate. It's called Bill C-11. And as most kids go back to school across the country, here in Ontario, it's the first day back. We're kind of getting back into our routine. So I think it's good to bring this back up and we talk about it. So to talk about that is the Shadow Minister for Canadian Heritage, the Member of Parliament for Saskatoon-Grasswood, the one and only Voice of Parliament, Kevin Waugh.
Thank you, Jamie. Deputy Shadow of Canadian Heritage. It's been a fabulous 6 to 8 months in Heritage. I think we're the busiest committee. We had to deal with, as you mentioned, C-11, the Online Streaming Act, where in this country, several people make a living on YouTube and so on, TikTok, and that has ruffled the feathers of many in this country that get their advertising dollars from government and other sources. And how dare you use YouTube or TikTok or any of those other social media apparatus to steal the way people get their news today. It's all changed from when I started 45, 50 years ago in the business. We only had radio and television. It was color. It wasn't black and white television. It wasn't that long ago. But of course, now everyone gets their news social media instead of the radio or television. And that's caused quite an uproar, I think, in Parliament, because the big companies in this country have gotten to the Liberals and they've cried wolf, and the Liberals have opened the floodgates and have agreed to pass C-11 and really shut down, I think, the free voice that people have had in this country with TikTok and YouTube producing various podcasts like this. And now you're going to be censored. So the algorithms are the big thing. So if they don't like the blueprint, it won't come up. And that's an issue that every Canadian should be very fearful with the government determining what you see and what you hear. And we fought it hard in May and June. It's the second time that we have fought this bill. Before the election last year, Jamie, you recall, we got it suspended. You know, they did pass it through the House then, and then Trudeau calls the election. The election nobody wanted, so we had to start all over. And we had another royal battle in the House of Commons in 2022 over this. Many people speaking out against the Online Streaming Act.
It really is something, if you really think about it, all the steps that the government has taken. Of course, CBC gets over a billion, that's with a B, $1 billion a year. The National Press Gallery gets $600 million. So not to your local papers, not to your local television, radio station. It is only print media that covers Parliament Hill, that $600 million slush fund. Now they're going to start with Bill C-11, if it passes, to start to stifle voices that the government does not like. And that's exactly what's going to happen. The government doesn't like your content. We're going to stifle that. What kind of free society is this? That's the beauty about the free market. If one door closes, another will open. And that's what the internet has been doing. People have been getting turned off on TV and traditional media. I used to work in that. So, you know, that breaks my heart. But at the same time, the world is changing and evolving. But the government has to make sure that it controls that. And this should be an area that free speech reigns.
Absolutely, Jamie. You know, we heard in committee time and time again there are voices in this country not being heard by traditional media. They just exclude them. And they're the minorities in this country, like Indigenous groups in Iqaluit and up north and all over this country. The only way they got their message out was on YouTube or TikTok or Facebook. And traditional media has left them out of this. And it was really disheartening bringing in groups, LGBTQ, other groups, diversity, Black Lives Matter. They're just not getting their message over traditional airwaves. And this was their way to connect with their people. And now I'm very worried when the Senate does get C11 that it will go through the Senate. We have a number of senators, former broadcasters, that know the importance of free speech. Pamela Wallin being one. I've talked to her many times on this. And we're concerned because whenever you get government interference, you get dictatorship. And that's not what Canadians want. We want a free, exposed media, if you don't mind. If I don't like watching CTV, I can click to another channel. If I don't like what I'm listening to for the national broadcast, I can go and get my sources from wherever I want, whether it's Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, whatever. And I think that's being eroded here in this country with C11, the Online Streaming Act. And I think Canadians, some of them, last year put up a big fight and then they kind of backed off this year, 2022, when we brought it out. And it's frustrating because I think when this bill passes and the Liberals and Facebook and all the algorithms put in, all of a sudden what you once saw is no longer going to be there. It's going to be down 500 and some spots, and you'll never see that again. And that's not what Canadians, I think, wanted out of this bill.
So that's the other thing, right? You just touched on it a bit, but there are content creators out there that aren't getting their fair share, their fair shake in the mainstream media. So they're trying new things out. And it's amazing to see all the people that have created something kind of with a cell phone and a microphone, and all of a sudden it takes off and it becomes a career for them because you are giving people content they like. Again, if the government starts determining what content you'd like, it then has control. It can control what you have. You can see, and you see little bits and pieces of the government sticking their fingers into different pots. You look at the energy sector, and so once you have the government interfering in that, it control access to it, and then it starts to then be the provider of those key elements of society that we used to, or we should take as something in our free society.
You're right on. I mean, you used to be in radio. You know how important radio is. It's diminished over the years, I think, for information. People are getting their information other ways on social media. And, people say, well, everything I read off Facebook, I don't believe. Well, that's fine. But you have a balance there. You can believe it or not. That will be up to you. And, media needs to, I think it's in the back ages a lot. I think we've seen that a little bit, CTV and Bell Media over Lisa LaFlamme when they did let her go, supposedly June 29th, and it just broke here in the last 2 weeks. It's interesting because media isn't as powerful. I mean, the regular source of media, the CBC, CTV, Global, where you get your information, the Globe and Mail, the National Post, and so on. The readership has come down in newspapers. Viewership has obviously come down on radio, and listeners have come down quite a bit in radio. So people have made their own choices, Jamie. And whether they get their information off Facebook or TikTok or Twitter, that's up to them. And obviously they're enjoying where they're getting their information today. I would say, and I used to be in television, it's far more, and we've got this instance right now in Saskatchewan where 10, 11 people have been killed, this incident in Saskatchewan that occurred this long weekend. People are getting their information more on Facebook and Twitter than they are the regular media. And I would say, you know what? good on them. They're seeing these alerts come out in the province of Saskatchewan. We've been inundated, 8, in fact, over the last 2 days, but it's far quicker doing it now with Facebook and the emergency alerts that we are getting than waiting for it to come on your local television station or even radio, because many of the radio stations now are simulcast and no one's in the control room at all on a long weekend.
Well, yes, you quickly touched on it. I know what's happening in your province of Saskatchewan, a massive tragedy that has taken the lives of too many, too young. Yeah. And, it's just unthinkable what has happened. And we wait further information as that story develops. Getting back to kind of government control and what you get when the government takes control of certain aspects, whether it be the energy industry, you get what the government approves, whether it's, in abundance, whether it is affordable for the vast majority of people. But if you're talking about government control over the entertainment industry, think about this, Kevin. Think about what would happen if the government had control over the music industry. I said this before in quite a few episodes ago, I think in June. You would get the music the government likes or the government wants to hear, not necessarily music you like, right? I bet you your musical tastes, Kevin, are different from mine, different from anyone else out there. So we want the best, you want the most variety possible so that there's something for everyone out there. Abundance equals peace. But if you get what the government decides what is good music, you probably don't like that. And this is the same thing that's going to happen to the internet if Bill C-11 passes and the censorship giants start pushing down content that people actually like to see, watch, hear, you name it. You're going to get what the government wants you to see and forget about what you want to see. That's not important, according to C-11 and the Liberals.
Absolutely. Years ago when they brought out in radio the CanCon requirements for a local radio station had to have 35% CanCon, which, helped a lot of Canadian artists, but shut out a number of Canadian artists because if you didn't have a hit in the top 10, your records weren't played or your tapes weren't played at the time. So you've hit it right on. I mean, TikTok has given new life to entertainment where somebody can do a song, somebody can do a message. It's short, it's concise, it's to the point. People have picked it up. I know a lot in the business have made well over $100,000 with people just purchasing and watching. Why not? It's a free enterprise. So if station CKLM isn't playing your song, you have another avenue. And that avenue happened to be Facebook, TikTok, so on, YouTube, and people have absorbed that. And what's wrong with the free market? We have found Justin Bieber, who, is he a Canadian artist? He's supposed to be, but all his songs are recorded in the United States. So the government's arguing, well, he's partly Canadian because he's born here, but he does all his production in Nashville or wherever he does it. And that's wrong. Well, come on. Justin Bieber was discovered through social media. He is a Canadian. He's one of the best artists that we have here in the country. And he got his start on social media. And what's wrong with that? We're finding people throughout this country that have a knack for entertainment that will never, ever get a chance other than social media. So we've shut out many people. If this bill, C-11, goes ahead as planned, it did pass the House of Commons. We were the only party that put up an angst on it when the vote did come in June. It disturbs me that the Bloc, the NDP, and the Liberals all joined together, not for the betterment of this country. They sent this bill to the Senate, and now we have a fight in the next month and a half in the Senate over a bill that I think is egregious in this country, determining winners and losers. And, if you're just happen to be a rising star in social media, your algorithm may push you down. You may never get the chance because of the algorithms and the government being involved. And Jamie, let me say this, the CRTC, and we've seen it with the 3-digital suicide line number, that they finally, after over a year in the House of Commons, all 338 members agreed with Todd Doherty on the 3-digit suicide number. It took the CRTC nearly 18 months to approve it. It's going to take them till next year, 2023, to bring it into force. I believe Ian Scott, who is the chair today of the CRTC, and the 500 or 600 employees it has under it now, it's a monster in Ottawa. They have overexceeded their powers. And I think for me, when I stood up in the House of Commons several times on C11, as a former broadcaster, I never trusted the CRTC. And there's no reason today, 45 years later, that I ever will trust the CRTC. This is bureaucracy to the height. The 9 members that get the information and make the decisions of the CRTC. Nobody in this country believes in the CRTC. They've made a number of mistakes. It takes them too long to make judgments. We've seen it with the telcos, many hearings involving Bell and TELUS and so on, Rogers. CRTC takes far too long to make decisions, and I have absolutely no faith in the CRTC going forward on C11.
I couldn't agree more. If you want to improve cellular and internet connectivity, open up the free market. Open the market up to competition, because competition gives you a better price, better service, better quality, because you have to keep striving for better. Our customers will go somewhere else. We talked about, we only have a few minutes left. I could go on about that, but I just want to bring back something we talked about right at the beginning. We talked this show about the internet, about creative artists making their content, but also one of the most important things that we also touched on was political content and what can be put down in terms of the government regulators if this passes. Obviously, it would be anything the government disagrees with, which is not what a free society stems from. It's supposed to be a diversity of thought, a diversity of ideas that we can come together and rally behind. Maybe some don't work out or some aren't very good. But think about all the things that's been happening over the past 2 years. If the government had complete control over the internet, was able to push down content that went against the government message, think about what would have been left out, or information that people would not have been able to get.
Yeah, you're right. And you know what? The Laith Maroff situation that has come up with Heritage over the last 2 weeks, along with his wife, Gretchen King. It's an interesting one, Jamie, because Canadian Heritage granted them $133,000 Community Media Advocacy Center to do an anti-racism strategy. So it's from 2016 to 21, Laith Maroff has got over $500,000 from this Liberal government. So, all of a sudden, others like Mark Goldberg did a little back check on Laith Maroff and CMAC. And you know what? They found anti-Semitic posts by him. Now we have the situation where the Diversity, Inclusion, and Youth Minister, Ahmed Hussein, won't comment on it. Pablo Rodriguez, the Heritage Minister, when asked this weekend about it, walked away from media reports. So the minister, I will quote, May 30th said, "There's lots of times we get questions that are very difficult to answer, but we'll do our best to answer." So here he was on this long weekend. First of all, this was a big story in the media when it did break, because Heritage gave Laith $133,822, and then crickets. It wasn't until Michael Levitt, a former Liberal MP, now working, of course, with a Jewish institution in Canada, along with Liberal MP Anthony Housefather, who is Jewish, sits on Canadian Heritage. He said, "I alerted the minister Hussein about this. He did nothing." And then the media is chasing, "How come you haven't said anything?" Finally, the Prime Minister last week, after 2 weeks of silence, finally says something about this, but they should pull all funding to CMAC, they should also demand the $133,000 back for anti-racism strategy. So you're absolutely correct. The media has finally jumped on this, but I will say this, it was social media again that brought this out. It wasn't the CBCs, it wasn't the global or CTVs, it was social media finding it. An institution like Blacklock's has done a very good job on this. And so people are getting their information from other sources. And that's what I mean. We need choices in this country. This was a story that was brought out, social media, and now it's been a two-headed dinosaur for the Liberals and will continue to be until we get back to the House of Commons September 19th.
Well, Kevin, we are pretty much out of time. I would love to go off at this topic. Like every other topic, I say this every week because it's just a great conversation. You were one of the first guests on the Blueprint when we were just audio. We didn't have the video content all lined up yet, so I do appreciate you coming on the show. But if you remember way back, the guests always get the last word, so I open the floor to you.
Well, it's been a good summer, I think, for MPs. Right now, the Conservative leadership is winding down. Probably should have finished about a month ago, because he or she that wins it on Saturday will have little time to get our caucus together for the September 19th. But I think Canadians are excited the way the Conservative Party of Canada is going. You've seen that on the membership numbers. Everywhere I go, people are talking about, I think the Conservative Party is ready to lead the country of Canada. I not only hear it in the West, where, of course, Conservatives rule in Alberta and Saskatchewan, but Jamie, I'm also hearing it from the Maritimes and Ontario and even Quebec. And I think our time is very near. Once we crown the new leader Saturday night, we will have a vision for this country that I think millions of Canadians will agree upon and make the Conservatives the next government in Canada.
That is why he is the voice of Parliament. Listen to him. Kevin Waugh, thank you very much. Member of Parliament from Saskatoon-Grasswood, the Deputy Shadow Minister for Canadian Heritage. Always appreciate your time and your insight.
Thank you, Jamie.
All right. Thank you very much, Kevin. And thank you for listening, for tuning in. It is extremely important. And it is that we ask you like, comment, subscribe, share this program. If you can't listen or watch it in its entirety right this second, download it, listen to it on platforms like CastBox, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, you name it, it is out there. New content for you every single Tuesday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Until then, remember, low taxes, less governments, more freedom. That's the Blueprint.